Native Americans from the time of Manifest Destiny to the era of the Indian Removal Act have historically taken the brunt of American cruelty and expansion. More often than not, the natives were forced to relocate, and those who did not comply faced death. The defeated Native American people needed a new type of warrior, not one who would face the Americans on the battlefield, but one that advocated for their rights through activism and protests. Russell Means was one of these new Native American warriors that would fight not with bow and sword, but with ideals and tenacity. Means would prove steadfast in his traditions, and in the face of adversity, refused to waver underneath the threat of violence and even death. In Russell Means' book, Where White Men Fear to Tread, he recounts his childhood in Pine Ridge Reservation in South Dakota. Means spent much of his time with his grandfather, who taught Russell about Native American lore, law, and tradition. His mother's side of the family taught him to respect and live alongside nature, and that humans were insignificant, and that life on Earth would flourish without them. Russell would latch onto these ideals, and carry them on throughout his life of activism. Dennis McClellan, in his article about Russell Means in the Los Angeles Times, recounts how Russell Means would go on in life to become one of the founding members of the American Indian Movement in 1968. The goal of this movement, based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, was the sovereignty of indigenous American tribes. Means joined this movement because he felt as though many Native Americans were ashamed of their heritage and not standing up for their rights on the national stage. AIM, or American Indian Movement, was focused on countering the racism onset by the US government and the Indian termination policies of the 1930s. Means' involvement in AIM would be the turning point of his life. An article on the website Mount Rushmore Revisited recounts one of AIM's most defiant and brave acts. Shortly after the establishment of AIM, Means and other members took part in an occupation of Mount Rushmore, a location once granted to the American Indians under the Treaty of Fort Laramie in 1868. However, once gold was discovered in the area, the American Indians were forced out of their rightfully claimed land. The protesters demanded that the treaty be honored, but were eventually removed by National Park Service. McClellan recounts how Means, in one last act of defiance, urinated on the face of George Washington, claiming it was how he felt about Americans carving out the faces of white men on the Holy Land of Native Americans. To Means, the Founding Fathers were not a group to be revered and honored. They were the villains and conquerors that led to the destruction of his ancestors, and bravely displayed his discontent at their actions. In the autumn of 1972, Means participated in the Trail of Broken Treaties, a nonviolent protest involving a caravan of buses, cars, and trucks, advocating for the improvement of health in Native American reservations. Many Native American children were dying due to the poor health conditions and impure water sources on the reservations. Means and other activists sought to bring these conditions to national attention, but the meeting planned with President Nixon about these concerns never takes place. Means then decides to take a more direct approach. Elisa Landry writes about the 1973 AIM occupation of Wounded Knee, South Dakota, in her article in Indian Country Today. Means further exemplifies his bravery by leading an armed standoff against FBI agents and police agents to remove the allegedly corrupt president of the Oglala Sioux civil rights organization. In a brutal shootout, 2 Sioux men were killed. Means stated that natives involved, including him, were ready to lay down their lives in support of their beliefs, a bravery admired by both Native and white Americans alike. Means' statements would later be tested, however, as his infamy grew and stories of his defiance spread. The Russell Means Freedom website tells the story of how within the span of 1975 and 1976, 2 attempts were made at Means' life, both of which involved him being shot and required stitches at least. This would prove insignificant in slowing down the activism of Russell Means. Even after his retirement from AIM in January 8, 1988, Means would continue to lead several protests, pursue an acting career in Hollywood, and go on to form the Republic of Lakota, an organization dedicated to protecting the rights of any indigenous people across the world. Means would later be diagnosed with esophageal cancer and would abide by Native American healing rituals in hopes of curing it. Unfortunately, the cancer would take his life on October 22, 2012. While Means has passed, his legacy and actions are far from forgotten. Means' sacrifices provided a stepping stone for the awareness and rights granted to Native Americans in the wake of the Civil Rights Movement. While some may believe that Russell's unwavering loyalty to Native American rights and traditions is foolish, few can deny that Means' bravery transcended the boundaries of culture and appealed to a more primitive understanding of what it meant to be brave. One that recognizes the courage needed to stand by one's roots, even if it brings them face to face with death. Means was just as brave as any of his ancestors before him, and serves as an example of the type of bravery future generations of natives should embrace when their rights are threatened.